I still remember the exact moment my future was stolen from me. It was a warm June afternoon, just 2 weeks after my high school graduation. I sat in my father's home office, surrounded by the pretentious oil paintings and leather-bound books he thought made him look sophisticated. "Dad, I need my college fund," I said, placing my MIT acceptance letter on his desk. "The first tuition payment is due next month." My father didn't even look up from his computer. "There's been a change of plans, Alexandra." That's when I noticed the empty photo frames on his desk. The ones that used to hold my academic awards and honor roll certificates had been replaced with pictures of my brother Michael's latest football game. "What do you mean, a change of plans?" My voice trembled slightly. "That money's been set aside since I was born. Grandma helped build that fund." Finally, he looked at me, his expression distant. "Your brother needs the money more than you do. His new business venture requires significant capital." My brother, of course. Michael, the golden child, who had dropped out of 3 colleges and burned through his own trust fund with failed entrepreneurial ideas. "But it's my money," I protested, feeling my carefully planned future crumbling. "I earned that scholarship to MIT. The fund was supposed to cover my living expenses and your brother needs the money more." Dad's voice boomed as he slammed his hand on the desk. "This is a family decision, Alexandra. Michael has a real opportunity here. Something that could save our company." I sat there, stunned into silence. Anderson Manufacturing, our family's company, had been struggling lately. Everyone knew it, even though my parents tried to maintain the appearance of success. But taking my college fund, the money my grandmother had specifically set aside for my education. "What am I supposed to do about college?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. My father shrugged, already turning back to his computer. "You're smart. You'll figure something out. Maybe take some community college classes, work part-time. It builds character." Character, right? Because having your future stolen builds character. I walked out of his office in a daze, nearly colliding with Michael in the hallway. He was wearing his usual smirk, the one that said he knew he could get away with anything. "Hey, sis," he grinned, waving a check in front of my face. "Thanks for the startup capital. Don't worry, I'll mention you in my success story someday." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear that check into pieces. Instead, I watched him saunter away, $150,000 of my future tucked into his pocket. That night, I sat in my room, surrounded by college brochures and acceptance letters I could no longer use. My mother knocked once before entering, her face arranged in what she probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Darling, try to understand," she said, perching on the edge of my bed. "The company needs this investment. Michael has such wonderful ideas, like the virtual reality bowling alley I cut in, or the gourmet pet food delivery service, or maybe the blockchain dating app." "This is different," she insisted. "He's more mature now. And the company is failing." I finished for her. "I've seen the books, Mom. I did an internship in the accounting department last summer, remember? Or did you forget that too, like you forgot this money was meant for my education?" She flinched. "Alexandra, don't be dramatic. We're just asking you to be a team player." Team player. That's what they always called it when they favored Michael at my expense. When they attended his games instead of my academic competitions. When they praised his D+ in economics while ignoring my full scholarship offers. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll be a team player. But remember this moment, Mom. Remember you had a choice." She left shortly after, probably to help Michael spend my money on another doomed venture. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade before pulling out my laptop. If they thought I would just accept this, they didn't know me at all. First, I emailed MIT explaining my situation and deferring my acceptance. Then I called my grandmother's old friend, Margaret Chen, who ran a successful investment firm. They did what? Margaret's voice crackled with anger when I explained the situation. Your grandmother would be furious. That money was meant for your education. I know, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I have a plan. I just need your help. Margaret had always seen something in me that my parents missed. She listened intently as I outlined my ideas, occasionally making thoughtful noises. It's risky, she said finally, but if anyone can pull it off, it's you. Come see me tomorrow. We'll work out the details. The next morning, while Michael was probably sleeping off a celebration hangover, I met Margaret in her office. By afternoon, I had a job as her personal assistant and a small studio apartment in the city. Your starting salary isn't much, she warned, but you'll learn more here than you would in any classroom. She was right. Over the next few months, I absorbed everything I could about business, finance, and corporate strategy. I worked 16-hour days, taking online classes at night, while learning the intricacies of hostile takeovers during the day. My parents barely noticed I had moved out. They were too busy dealing with the fallout from Michael's latest venture, a cryptocurrency for pet owners that failed spectacularly within 3 months. He just needs more time, I overheard my father telling the board of directors, and more capital. I made notes of everything, every failed investment, every missed opportunity, every poor decision. I watched from afar as Anderson Manufacturing's stock price fell, as valuable contracts were lost, as my father's grip on the company weakened. Margaret taught me patience. The best revenge isn't swift, she would say, reviewing market reports with me. It's methodical, strategic. You wait until they think they're safe, then you show them exactly what they overlooked. I took her lessons to heart. While my family thought I was just a secretary, I was building my own investment portfolio. Every spare dollar went into carefully chosen stocks. Every bonus was reinvested. I learned to read market trends, to spot undervalued companies, to recognize opportunities others missed. 1 year became 2, then 3. Michael burned through my college fund and started asking for more. The company's stock price continued to fall. My father's hair turned grayer, his shoulders more stooped. And me? I was growing stronger, smarter, more capable than they could have imagined. 5 years after they stole my future, I started my own investment firm. Small at first, specializing in turning around struggling companies. Margaret introduced me to her contacts, vouched for my abilities. Alexander Anderson? People would ask. Any relation to Anderson Manufacturing? No. I would reply smoothly. Just a coincidence. Let them think that. Let my family think I had disappeared into obscurity. They would learn the truth soon enough, because I had a plan 8 years in the making. And as I watched Anderson Manufacturing's stock price hit an all-time low, I knew it was finally time to make my move. They had taken my college fund, thinking they were securing their future. Instead, they had set in motion events that would give me their entire company. And the best part? They would never see it coming. The Anderson Manufacturing headquarters still dominated the city skyline, but the building had lost its shine. The brass nameplates were tarnished, the marble lobby showed signs of wear, and the receptionist's smiles seemed strained. I noticed all this as I walked through the front doors for the first time in 8 years, dressed in a Chanel suit that cost more than my father's car. "I have an appointment with the board," I told the receptionist, using my professional voice, the one that had closed millions in deals. "Alexandra Sterling, representing Sterling Capital." She didn't recognize me. Why would she? The quiet, studious daughter of James Anderson had disappeared long ago, replaced by a woman who had built a $300 million investment firm from nothing. "Of course, Miss Sterling. The board is expecting you. 18th floor." I smiled, thinking of the last time I'd been in the boardroom. I was 16, giving a presentation about modernizing the company's inventory system. My father had dismissed my ideas as naive. Now, 8 years later, the outdated system was just one of many problems dragging the company down. The elevator doors opened onto a floor that hadn't changed since my childhood. Same dark wood paneling, same pretentious oil paintings, same sense of fading glory. But now I could see what I couldn't before: the desperate attempt to maintain appearances while everything crumbled. "Ms. Sterling," the board chairman, Thomas Wright, greeted me warmly. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." I shook his hand, noting the nervous energy in the room. 10 board members sat around the massive table, all wearing expressions of barely concealed desperation. My father's seat at the head of the table was conspicuously empty. "Where is James Anderson?" I asked, though I knew exactly where he was, trying to secure last-minute financing to prevent this very meeting. "Mr. Anderson is unavoidably detained," Thomas said carefully. "But as chairman, I have full authority to proceed with these discussions." I opened my briefcase, removing a thick folder of documents. "Very well. Shall we begin?" For the next hour, I methodically laid out Sterling Capital's offer to buy Anderson Manufacturing. Every weakness in the company's position, every failed initiative, every misstep from the past 8 years. I presented them all in devastating detail. "Your stock price has dropped 70% in 5 years," I noted, displaying graphs on the presentation screen. "Your market share has declined by 45%. Your latest attempts at modernization, led by Michael Anderson, have resulted in losses exceeding $20 million. The board members shifted uncomfortably. They knew all this, of course, but hearing it laid out so clinically made it impossible to ignore. "Sterling Capital is prepared to offer $45 per share," I continued. "A generous premium over your current trading price of $28. We'll assume all debt obligations and guarantee current employment levels for at least 6 months." "And management positions?" Thomas asked nervously. "The Anderson family has run this company for 3 generations. Current management will be evaluated based on performance metrics," I replied coolly. "Those who demonstrate value will be retained. Others will be relocated." The double doors burst open. My father stormed in, his face red with fury, Michael trailing behind him like a lost puppy. "This meeting is over," he'd announced. "Anderson Manufacturing is not for sale." I turned slowly, savoring the moment. "Hello, Dad." The color drained from his face. Michael's mouth fell open. The board members looked between us in confusion. "Alexandra?" My father's voice was barely a whisper. "Actually, it's Ms. Sterling now," I corrected him. "Though I'm not surprised you didn't recognize me. You never did pay much attention unless Michael was involved." Your Sterling Capital?" Michael stammered. "Impressed?" I smiled. "I'd built it without any help. No stolen college funds needed." My father gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. This is impossible. You're just what, Dad? A girl who should take community college classes? Work part-time to build character? I turned back to the board. Gentlemen, let me be clear. Your company is failing. Your CEO's leadership has been disastrous. And his heir apparent, I glanced at Michael, has proven himself incompetent with every opportunity he's been given. Now see here, my father started, but Thomas cut him off. She's right, James. The numbers don't lie. We've lost confidence in your leadership. I placed a final document on the table. Sterling Capital's offer expires in 48 hours. After that, we'll begin buying shares on the open market at a much lower price. Your choice. You can't do this, Michael protested. This is our company. Correction, I said sharply. This was grandfather's company, which you and Dad have nearly destroyed. The same way you destroyed my college fund with your ridiculous ventures. The board members were watching this family drama unfold with growing understanding. I saw recognition in their eyes, not just of who I was, but of how badly they had underestimated me. Alexandra, my father's voice cracked slightly. We can discuss this privately, as a family. Like we discussed my college fund. I kept my voice steady. No, Dad. This isn't a family matter anymore. This is business. And in business, unlike in this family, competence matters more than birth order. I gathered my documents, tucking them back into my briefcase. You have 48 hours. I suggest you use them wisely. As I walked toward the door, Michael called out. Wait, what about me? What about my position? I turned back one last time. Remember what Dad told me 8 years ago. You're smart. You'll figure something out. Maybe take some community college classes, work part-time. I hear it builds character. The boardroom erupted in chaos as I left. Voices arguing, papers shuffling, my father's authority crumbling in real time. But I didn't stay to watch. I had more important meetings to attend. In my car, I checked my phone. Messages from our stock monitoring team confirmed that Anderson Manufacturing's share price was already dropping on rumors of the takeover. Right on schedule. Margaret had taught me well. In business, she always said, timing is everything. You wait until they're at their weakest, then strike when they think they still have options. I had given them 48 hours, but I knew they wouldn't need that long. The board had already made up their minds. My father's reign was over. All that remained was the formal surrender. And somewhere, I hoped my grandmother was watching, knowing that her investment in my future hadn't been wasted after all. It had just taken a different path than anyone expected. The next 48 hours would change everything. The company would be mine, and my family would learn that the daughter they had dismissed had become the architect of their downfall. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about proving that merit should matter more than gender or birth order, about showing that their biggest mistake wasn't taking my college fund. It was underestimating what I could become without it. I opened my laptop to review the transition plans we had prepared. 8 years of preparation were about to pay off. They had no idea what was coming. They didn't need 48 hours. The board's decision came in less than 24. I sat in my office at Sterling Capital, reviewing the final acquisition documents when my assistant entered. Ms. Sterling, the Anderson Manufacturing Board just voted. They'd accepted your offer. I allowed myself a small smile. Unanimous? All but 2 votes. Your father and Michael abstained. Of course they did. Too proud to admit defeat, too powerless to prevent it. There's more, my assistant continued. Your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent about seeing you. I glanced at the security feed on my computer. There she was, wearing her finest pearls and most expensive suit, trying to maintain her dignity while security guards politely but firmly kept her away from the elevators. Send her up, I said after a moment. It's time we had a talk. My mother swept into my office 5 minutes later, her eyes widening as she took in the view from the 40th floor. My office was everything my father's pretended to be, genuine power instead of borrowed importance. Alexandra, she began, her voice wavering slightly. We need to discuss this as a family. 8 years too late for that, Mom. I gestured to a chair. But please sit. Would you like some coffee? Perhaps tea in your favorite china cups, like the ones you used to serve while telling me to be more like Michael. She sank into the chair, her composure cracking. You don't understand what this will do to your father, to our family name. I understand perfectly. I understand that you and Dad took my future and handed it to Michael, expecting me to just accept it. I understand that you watched him waste not just my college fund, but millions more in company money, and still believed in him more than me. We were trying to save the company, she protested weakly. No, I corrected her. You were trying to save your image of what the company should be, run by your son, regardless of his competence. Well, now I'm going to show you what the company could have been if you'd bothered to notice your daughter's potential. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. It's done. Papers are signed. The company is yours. Perfect timing, I murmured, then looked back at my mother. Congratulations, Mom. You're now looking at the new owner and CEO of Anderson Manufacturing. Though I suppose we'll have to change the name. She paled. You can't. I already have. I turned my laptop screen toward her, showing the signed agreements. The board voted. The papers are signed. Anderson Manufacturing is now a subsidiary of Sterling Capital. Your father will never accept this. He doesn't have a choice. I stood up, walking to the window. You know what's ironic? If you had given me my college fund, I would have gone to NIT, probably ended up working for some tech company. But by taking it away, you forced me to learn business the hard way, to build something of my own. So in a way, I should thank you. A commotion outside my office interrupted us. My father's voice boomed through the reception area. I demand to see her. Send them in, I called to my assistant. My father burst in, Michael right behind him. They both stopped short at the sight of my office, the reality of my success finally hitting them. How? My father demanded. How did you build all this? The same way grandfather built Anderson Manufacturing. Hard work, strategic thinking, and an understanding of what makes a business actually succeed. I met his gaze steadily. Everything you taught Michael, but never bothered to teach me. I won't let you destroy my company, he growled. Your company? I laughed. You mean the company you've been systematically destroying for years? The one where profits have dropped 70% under your leadership? That company. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall of screens behind me lit up with graphs and charts. 8 years of declining performance under my father's management. Let's talk about Michael's contributions. I continued, pulling up more data. 5 failed initiatives, each more expensive than the last. The cryptocurrency debacle alone cost $3 million. The automated factory upgrade that never worked. Another $5 million. Shall I go on? Michael slumped in a chair, his usual bravado evaporating. Those were just temporary setbacks. No, They were failures. Failures that could have been avoided if either of you had listened to the quiet daughter who understood modern business practices instead of clinging to outdated methods and throwing money at foolish schemes. My father's face had gone from red to white. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to save the company you nearly destroyed. Modern inventory systems, updated manufacturing processes, proper quality control. Everything I suggested years ago that you dismissed as naive. I picked up a stack of folders from my desk. These are your severance packages. Generous ones, because unlike you, I understand the value of family connections in business. You'll be publicly retired, your reputation's intact. Provided, of course, you cooperate fully with the transition. And if we don't? My father challenged. I smiled. Then I released the full audit reports to the shareholders. Every failed project, every misused fund, every poor decision that led to this moment. Your choice. My mother stood up, hands shaking. Alexandra, please. We can find another way. Like you found another way to fund my education? I shook my head. No, Mom. This is business. And in business, unlike in this family, actions have consequences. I walked around my desk, facing them directly. You have until tomorrow to sign the severance agreements. After that, the offer expires, and we do this the hard way. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. They left in silence, my father's shoulders slumped, my mother fighting back tears, Michael looking lost without his usual confidence. As the door closed behind them, Margaret entered from my private conference room. Well done, she said softly. Your grandmother would be proud. I let out a long breath, feeling 8 years of tension finally release. You know what the strangest part is? I didn't do this for revenge. Not really. I did it because I knew I could run the company better than they ever could. Margaret smiled. That's why you'll succeed where they failed. Now, shall we discuss the rebranding strategy? Over the next year, Anderson Manufacturing transformed into Sterling Industries. The changes I had proposed years ago were finally implemented, bringing the company into the modern era. Profits rose, employee satisfaction improved, and our market share began to recover. My father retired to Florida, unable to face his former business associates. My mother threw herself into charity work, trying to maintain her social standing. Michael, surprisingly, found his footing in sales. Once he was forced to work his way up from the bottom, he actually developed some real skills. As for me, I kept my grandfather's original business plan framed on my office wall, right next to my first dollar earned and the MIT acceptance letter I never got to use. They remind me daily that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. They took my college fund, thinking they were securing their future. Instead, they gave me the motivation to take everything they had. But more importantly, they taught me the most valuable lesson in business. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're usually the ones paying attention. And sometimes, they're the ones who end up signing your paychecks. The crystal wine glasses clinked as my sister Emma raised her hand, drawing everyone's attention like she always did. Big news, everyone. Her perfect smile gleamed as she looked around our parents' mahogany dining table. I just got called for an interview at Sterling Enterprises. My mother gasped in delight, nearly dropping her fork. Sterling Enterprises? The biggest tech company in the city? The very same, Emma preened, tossing her expertly highlighted hair. Senior Marketing Director position. They reached out to me specifically. Of course they had. Everything came easily to Emma. Perfect grades without studying. Dream jobs without trying. a constant stream of success that our parents never tired of celebrating. I sat quietly, pushing my food around my plate, trying to become invisible. But in this family, I was never allowed to fade into the background for long. Not when they needed someone to compare Emma to. Isn't that wonderful? My mother gushed. Now that's a real career path. She turned to me, her smile turning sharp. You should ask Emma for advice, Sarah. Maybe she can help you find something better. Better than what I was doing now, she meant. Better than the consulting work that they all dismissed as glorified freelancing. Better than building my own company from scratch, because apparently being your own boss wasn't as impressive as having one. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said quietly, but Emma was already laughing. Oh, please, you can't even get a real job, she smirked. How long are you going to pretend that your little consulting thing is an actual career? My father set down his wine glass. Emma has a point, Sarah. You're 32. It's time to get serious about your future. I gripped my fork tighter, thinking about the contracts sitting on my desk at home, the acquisition deals I was negotiating, the empire I had built while they were all busy undermining me. My business is doing well, I started to explain, but Emma cut me off. Business? Please. You work from your apartment and barely make enough to pay rent. Meanwhile, I'm about to be a senior director at Sterling. She turned to our parents. Did I mention the salary? Base pay is $250,000 plus bonuses. My mother nearly swooned. My father beamed with pride. I thought about my company's latest quarterly earnings report and had to suppress a laugh. When's the interview? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Monday morning, Emma replied smugly. Not that it matters. The position is practically mine already. The CEO specifically requested to interview me personally. I bet they did, I thought, remembering the stack of resumes on my desk. Among them, Emma's application, forwarded to me by HR with a note. Another entitled candidate with an inflated ego. Your call, boss. Well, good luck, I said, standing up. I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow. Emma snickered. What? Did someone finally agree to buy something from you? Sarah. My mother sighed. When are you going to stop this ridiculous independent phase? Your father could have gotten you a proper position years ago. I thought about the nameplate on my office door. The one that reads Sarah Mitchell, CEO, Sterling Enterprises. The one Emma would see tomorrow morning. You're right, Mom, I said, gathering my things. Maybe it is time for a change. They probably thought I was finally admitting defeat. They had no idea what was coming. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, not that they knew I could afford one, I thought about how we got here. How their constant dismissal had driven me to build something bigger than they could imagine. It started 10 years ago when I graduated with my MBA. Emma was the star of the family then too, climbing the corporate ladder with her natural talent, while I quietly studied market trends and business strategies. When I told them I was starting my own consulting firm, they laughed. When I landed my first major client, they dismissed it as luck. When I started buying up struggling companies and turning them around, they didn't even notice. 5 years ago, I made my biggest move yet, acquiring Sterling Enterprises through a complex series of shell companies and investment firms. The previous CEO was ready to retire, and I had spent years preparing for this moment. I changed my professional name to Sarah Mitchell, my mother's maiden name, knowing my family never paid enough attention to business news to make the connection. I rebuilt Sterling from the ground up, transforming it into the tech giant it is today. And through it all, my family remained blissfully unaware too busy praising Emma's minor achievements to notice that their unsuccessful daughter was now one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my building's private garage. A text from Emma. "You should really come to the Sterling building sometime. See what a real company looks like. I'll give you a tour after I get the job." I smiled, thinking of my corner office on the top floor, the one with the view of the entire city, the one Emma had been dreaming about in her application letter. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. In my apartment, I reviewed Emma's resume one more time. It was impressive on paper. Good education, steady career progression, solid references. But I had done my research. I knew about the projects she had taken credit for, but barely contributed to. The subordinates she had thrown under the bus, the corners she had cut. Emma had always been good at presenting the perfect image. Tomorrow, she would learn that image isn't everything. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Darling, I know you're probably feeling discouraged seeing Emma's success. Why don't you let your father make some calls? It's not too late to start a proper career." I set the phone down without responding and walked to my home office. The wall was covered in business magazines featuring Sterling's remarkable turnaround. Tech's most innovative CEO, one headline read, "Sarah Mitchell, the unseen power player revolutionizing the industry," declared another. My family had spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. Tomorrow, they would learn just how wrong they were. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, typing out an email to HR. "Please ensure Ms. Emma Carter's interview is scheduled in my office at 9 a.m. sharp. And make sure she waits in the lobby for at least 30 minutes before being brought up." A small petty detail, perhaps, but after years of enduring her condescension, I thought I deserved a little dramatic flair. I spent the rest of the evening reviewing company reports and finalizing acquisition plans, just like any other Sunday night. But this Sunday felt different. Tomorrow, everything would change. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked nothing like the timid daughter my family still saw me as. My suits were tailored now, my presence commanding. I had grown into my power while they weren't watching. Tomorrow, they would finally see me. And I couldn't wait for the show to begin. Monday morning arrived with a sense of delicious anticipation. I stood in my private elevator, ascending to the top floor of Sterling Enterprises, watching the city wake up through the glass walls. My Armani suit was immaculate, my heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor as I stepped out. "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell," my executive assistant Diana greeted me with a knowing smile. "Your 9 a.m. appointment has arrived early." She's been waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes, insisting that the CEO specifically requested her presence. I checked my watch. 8:45 a.m. Let her wait another 10 minutes. How's she handling it? Diana's eyes twinkled. She's demanded coffee 3 times, name-dropped several executives she claims to know, and told a receptionist that her sister is a nobody who can't even get a proper job. I smiled, setting my briefcase on my desk. Perfect. Has she noticed any of the magazine covers? No, Diana smirked. She's too busy telling everyone within earshot about her marketing expertise to look around. Typical Emma. So focused on promoting herself that she missed the obvious. The lobby walls were lined with press coverage of Sterling's transformation under my leadership. My photo was literally hanging above the reception desk, but Emma would never notice. She never had. Her resume listed some impressive achievements at her current company, Diana noted, arranging folders on my desk. I took the liberty of fact-checking them. And half are exaggerated, a third are outright lies. and the rest were group projects where she took sole credit. I nodded, unsurprised. Just like high school. Remember when she won that science fair? The project you actually built while she was at cheerleading practice. The very same. I sat down behind my desk, adjusting my nameplate slightly. Send her up at 9 a.m. exactly. And Diana? Make sure the security team is recording the lobby and elevator cameras. I want to preserve this moment. At precisely 9 a.m., my office phone buzzed. Ms. Carter is here for her interview, Diana announced formally. Send her in. The door opened, and Emma strode in like she already owned the place. She wore an expensive but slightly too flashy suit, her confidence bordering on arrogance. Then she saw me sitting behind the CEO's desk. The color drained from her face. Sarah? She stammered, frozen in the doorway. What? What are you doing here? Good morning, Emma, I said pleasantly. Please take a seat. We have a lot to discuss about your application for the Senior Marketing Director position. She didn't move, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. But I'm supposed to meet with Sarah Mitchell, the CEO. I smiled, gesturing to my nameplate. That would be me. Sarah Mitchell, formerly Sarah Carter. Though I'm not surprised you didn't make the connection. You never did pay attention to anything I did. Emma sank into the chair across from me, her perfect composure cracking. This is impossible. You're just a consultant. You work from your apartment. Actually, I leaned back in my chair, enjoying this moment. I own this building, and several others. Sterling Enterprises has been my company for the past 5 years. I pulled out her resume. Now, shall we discuss your application? I have some questions about these achievements you've listed. You can't be serious, Emma whispered, her voice shaking. You can't be the CEO. You're nobody. That's what you all thought, isn't it? I kept my voice calm, professional. Poor Sarah can't even get a real job. Just a nobody working from her apartment. Tell me, Emma, did you ever once ask what kind of consulting I did? What companies I worked with? Or were you too busy bragging about your own mediocre accomplishments? She flinched. I didn't. No, you didn't. I agreed. None of you did. You were all too convinced of my failure to notice my success, too busy mocking my choices to see where they were leading. I opened her file. Now, about this claim that you single-handedly increased your department's revenue by 200% last year. That's accurate, she stuttered, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Interesting. I pulled out another document. Because I have here the annual report from your company. The entire marketing department only saw a 30% increase. And according to your former colleagues, that was primarily due to a campaign developed by your junior team. The one you rejected initially but took credit for after it succeeded. Emma's face went from pale to red. You've been investigating me? I investigate all potential senior executives thoroughly. We have very high standards at Sterling. I smiled. Standards that value actual achievement over self-promotion. Just then my phone buzzed. Diana's voice came through the speaker. Ms. Mitchell, your parents are in the lobby, demanding to see you. They're quite insistent. Of course they were. Emma had probably texted them the moment she saw me. Send them up, I said calmly. I think it's time for a family meeting. Emma shifted nervously in her chair. Sarah, look, about last night. About all the things I've said. Save it. I cut her off. I'm not interested in apologies motivated by fear. I've spent years listening to you undermine and belittle me. Now you get to sit there and learn exactly who your unsuccessful sister really is. The door burst open. My parents stormed in, their faces a mix of confusion and anger. "Sarah," my mother exclaimed, "what is the meaning of this? What are you doing in the CEO's office?" "Hello, Mother," I replied coolly. "I was just reviewing Emma's job application. Would you like to join us?" We were discussing the importance of honesty in professional achievements. My father's face reddened. "Stop this nonsense immediately. You're embarrassing yourself and your sister." I stood up slowly, letting my authority fill the room. "No, Dad. For once in your life, you're going to listen to me. All of you are." I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall of windows behind me transformed into a screen, displaying Sterling's financial growth under my leadership. "Welcome to my company, the one you've been hearing about at your country club, the one Emma's been desperate to work for, the one that's been making headlines while you were all too busy dismissing me to notice." They stared at the numbers, the achievements, the empire I had built while they weren't watching. "Now," I said, sitting back down, "let's talk about what really makes someone successful in business. Shall we begin with integrity, or should we start with actual competence?" The color drained from Emma's face as she realized this interview was about to become very, very uncomfortable, and we were just getting started. The silence in my office was deafening as my family stared at the financial projections on the screen. 10 years of growth, billions in acquisitions, my photo on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, and Business Weekly. This is all yours," my mother whispered, sinking into one of the leather chairs. "Every bit of it," I confirmed, standing to walk around my desk. "The consulting business you mocked? That was just the beginning. While Emma was bragging about her mid-level marketing positions, I was buying and transforming struggling companies. While you were lamenting my lack of a real job, I was building an empire." My father, always quick to anger, found his voice first. "Why didn't you tell us? Why keep this secret?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tell you? Like I tried to tell you about my first major client, or my first successful company turnaround, or any of my achievements that you dismissed because they didn't fit your narrow definition of success." Emma shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Sarah, if we had known." "That's exactly the point." I cut her off. "You only care now because of what I've built, not who I am. You're only interested because of the power and money, not because you're proud of what I've accomplished." I pressed another button on my desk, and security footage from last night's dinner appeared on the screen. Emma's mocking voice filled the room. "Can't even get a real job." "Stop," Emma pleaded, her face flushing. "We get it." "Do you?" I turned to face her directly. "Because I've been watching you build your career on exaggerations and stolen credit. I've talked to your former colleagues, your supposed references. I know exactly how you've gotten every position you've ever held." My mother stood up, smoothing her designer dress nervously. "Surely we can work something out. We're family, after all." "Family?" I picked up Emma's resume. Like when Emma took credit for my science project in high school, or when she told her college friends I was a dropout because I started my own business instead of following the corporate path. That kind of family. I was young, Emma protested weakly. "We all make mistakes." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "And now you get to face the consequences of yours." "Diana?" My assistant entered with a thick folder. "The investigation results you requested, Ms. Mitchell." "Thank you." I opened the folder and began reading. Falsified achievements, stolen ideas, workplace bullying complaints. I looked up at Emma. Did you really think none of this would come out during our background check? Emma's face went pale. Those accusations were never proven. Because you had Daddy's lawyers shut down every investigation, I finished for her. But Sterling takes corporate integrity very seriously. We thoroughly vet all potential executives. My father stepped forward, his business negotiation face on. Now, Sarah, surely we can discuss this privately, as a family. You lost that right last night, I replied calmly. When you sat there and let Emma mock me. When you suggested I needed your help to find a real job. When you once again made it clear that nothing I did would ever be good enough. I pressed another button on my desk. The office door opened, and Harold Bennett, my chief legal officer, entered. Harold, please explain to my family the consequences of submitting fraudulent information on a Sterling Enterprises job application. Harold adjusted his glasses. Falsifying credentials and experience on an executive-level application is grounds for immediate rejection and potential legal action, especially if previous employers wish to pursue damages for defamation or intellectual property theft. Emma's composure cracked completely. You wouldn't. You can't. Can't what? I asked softly. Protect my company from someone with a proven history of dishonesty? Enforce our ethical standards? Or are you suggesting I should give you special treatment because we're family? Sarah, please, my mother begged. Think about what this would do to our reputation. Like you thought about mine. All those years of snide comments and dismissive attitudes. I shook my head. No, Mother. Emma's application is rejected. Furthermore, I'm forwarding our findings to her current employer. They should know exactly who they're trusting with their corporate image. Emma burst into tears, but they weren't the calculated sobs she usually used to get her way. These were real, the tears of someone finally facing consequences. As for you two, I turned to my parents. I suggest you take a long, hard look at how you've treated both your daughters. One you praised endlessly despite her dishonesty. The other you dismissed despite her integrity and success. My father's face darkened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Humiliating your family? No, Dad. I'm not enjoying this at all. I'm doing what you should have done years ago, holding people accountable for their actions. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I now partly owned. You know what the worst part is? If any of you had shown even a moment of genuine interest in my work, you would have known about all this. My name, my full name, has been in the business news for years. But you were all too convinced of my failure to notice my success. I turned back to them. Now I have a board meeting to prepare for. Harold will escort you out. Emma, you'll receive official notification of our decision in writing. I suggest you use this as an opportunity for self-reflection. Sarah, my mother tried one last time. We can still be a family. We can work through this. I sat back down at my desk, picking up a report. We'll always be related, Mother, but family? That requires respect, support, and love, none of which you've shown me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. They left in silence, Emma's tears still falling, my parents' pride in shambles. As the door closed behind them, Diana entered with a cup of coffee. Are you okay? She asked softly. I took a deep breath, looking at the family photo I kept in my drawer. Not of my parents or Emma, but of my grandfather, the only one who had believed in me from the start. You know what, Diana? I am. For the first time in years, I really am. Over the next few months, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Emma's current employer launched an investigation into her past achievements, leading to her eventual resignation. My parents stopped appearing in society pages, their social standing diminished by the revelation that they had dismissed their successful daughter while enabling their dishonest one. I focused on my work, continuing to build Sterling into an even stronger company. The business world buzzed with the story once it got out. The secret CEO who had hidden her success from her unsupportive family. It became a symbol of quiet determination triumphing over loud mediocrity. 6 months later, I received a letter from Emma. Not an email or text, but a handwritten letter of apology. For the first time in her life, she had been forced to work her way up from an entry-level position, no family connections to rely on. She wrote that she finally understood the value of genuine achievement. My parents took longer to come around, but eventually, my mother sent a similar letter, acknowledging their failures and asking for a chance to really know me, not as the daughter they had dismissed, but as the woman I had become. I kept both letters in my desk, next to my grandfather's photo, not because I was ready to forgive, but because they reminded me of an important truth. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. 1 year to the day after that fateful interview, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports. Diana entered with the latest business magazine. The cover story: Sterling CEO Sarah Mitchell, The Power of Quiet Success. The article didn't mention my family drama or Emma's failed interview. It focused on what really mattered: the company I had built, the innovations we had created, the changes we had made in the industry. Because in the end, that's what real success looks like. Not bragging at family dinners or inflating achievements, but building something meaningful, something lasting. They had called me worthless at a family dinner. Now I was their boss, their superior, their example of what true success looks like. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever be. Growing up, I never felt like the favorite child in my family. My brother Marcus was the golden boy, the one with the natural business sense, as my father always said. While I worked hard to earn straight A's and perfect SAT scores, Marcus could barely maintain a C average. But somehow that didn't matter. He had charisma, they said. He knew how to talk to people. He would inherit Morrison Industries one day, the company my grandfather built from nothing. I was just Olivia, the quiet one who spent too much time studying. You should be more like your brother, my mother would say, shaking her head as I pored over my textbooks. Business isn't about books, it's about personality. But I knew better. I saw how our family company was struggling under my father's outdated leadership. I noticed the declining profits, the mounting debt, the whispers among employees. While Marcus partied his way through business school, I was secretly taking night classes in corporate finance and strategic management. Not that my parents noticed. The day everything changed started like any other Sunday family dinner. I sat at our massive dining table, listening to Marcus boast about his latest business idea, another half-baked scheme that would never work. My father nodded along, completely enraptured, while my mother beamed with pride. Then I noticed the stack of papers my father was trying to hide behind the bread basket. Bills. Lots of them, all stamped with red, final notice warnings. Dad, I interrupted Marcus's monologue about cryptocurrency investments. Is everything okay with the company? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My father's face darkened. That's none of your concern, Olivia. But it was my concern, because unlike my parents, I had been watching our family legacy crumble for years. Morrison Industries, once a leader in industrial manufacturing, was hemorrhaging money under my father's mismanagement and my brother's reckless investments. That night, after everyone went to bed, I snuck into my father's home office. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Morrison Industries was $90,000 in debt, with major loans coming due within the week. My parents were about to lose everything my grandfather had built. I had been saving money for years, working consulting jobs on the side while maintaining my boring accounting position. I had plans for that money, dreams of starting my own company. But family comes first, right? The next morning, I transferred every penny I had saved, exactly $90,000, to cover the company's immediate debts. I thought they would be grateful. I thought they would finally see my value. I was wrong. You did what you had take. My father roared when I showed him the transfer receipts. His face turned an alarming shade of purple. How dare you interfere in company business? I saved the company, I said calmly, though my hands were shaking. Those debts would have bankrupted us by Friday. Us? My mother's laugh was cruel. There is no us in business, Olivia. This is a family company, and you're not part of its future. But I just gave you everything I had. My voice trailed off as I saw Marcus smirking from the doorway. Nobody asked you to play hero, he drawled. Dad and I had everything under control. We were about to close a huge deal next week. I knew he was lying. I had seen the numbers. There was no deal. G-H-T-L-G. My father suddenly screamed, slamming his fist on his desk. IOUREDEAD2US. How dare you try to make us look incompetent? You did that all on your own, I whispered, but they weren't listening. My mother was already calling the security guards. Escort her out, she ordered coldly, and make sure she never sets foot in this building again. As the guards led me out of the office building my grandfather had built, I felt something inside me break. But it wasn't my spirit. It was the last thread of loyalty I felt toward my family. They thought they had won. They thought they had put me in my place. They had no idea that I had been preparing for this moment for years. You see, while they were dismissing me as the quiet bookworm, I had been building connections. While they mocked my boring accounting job, I had been learning everything about corporate takeovers. And while they kicked me out of the family business, they didn't realize I had already set in motion a plan that would change everything. That night, as I sat in my small apartment, I made a call to someone I had been carefully cultivating a relationship with for the past year. Harold Bennett, the CEO of Bennett Acquisitions, one of the largest corporate raiders on the East Coast. They kicked you out? Harold's voice was calm, but I could hear the hint of anticipation. Then I suppose it's time to proceed with our plan. Yes, I replied, my voice steady despite the tears drying on my cheeks. Start buying shares. Buy everything you can get. But remember our agreement. When this is over, I want to be CEO. Of course, Harold chuckled. After all, who better to run Morrison Industries than a Morrison? Even if your family is too blind to see your potential. I hung up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. In 3 months, Morrison Industries would hold its annual board meeting. In 3 months, my family would learn exactly what their quiet, bookish daughter was capable of. They had no idea what was coming. In the weeks that followed, I watched from afar as my family celebrated their victory over me. My brother posted pictures of himself in father's office, practicing his future CEO pose. My mother hosted lavish dinner parties, bragging about how they had dealt with a troublesome situation. They didn't notice their company shares being quietly bought up by various shell companies. They didn't see the web I was weaving around them. They were too busy congratulating themselves on putting me in my place. But I noticed everything. I saw their desperate attempts to secure new loans. I watched as my father's face grew more haggard with each passing week. I observed my brother's boasts becoming increasingly hollow as investors began pulling out. The $90,000 I had given them had bought them a brief reprieve, but without proper management, the company was once again sliding toward disaster, just as I had predicted, just as I had planned. "They're getting desperate," Harold informed me during our weekly update. "Your father tried to approach our competitors for a merger yesterday. Nobody's interested." Of course they weren't. I had made sure of that. "How much longer?" I asked, reviewing the latest acquisition reports. "2 more weeks," Harold replied. "By then, we'll own 51% of Morrison Industries. You'll have your chance at the board meeting." I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he would realize what was coming. Perfect. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother, the first contact since they'd thrown me out. "We're having a family dinner on Sunday. Your father might be willing to forgive you if you apologize." I didn't bother responding. In 2 weeks, they would learn that I wasn't the one who needed forgiveness. The stage was set. The pieces were in motion. All I had to do was wait. And I had become very good at waiting. The morning of the board meeting arrived with a sense of destiny. I stood in my penthouse apartment. Not that my family knew I could afford one, adjusting my tailored black suit. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the quiet daughter my parents had dismissed. Gone was the intentionally understated wardrobe, the careful attempt to avoid attention. Today, I dressed like what I was about to become, a CEO. My phone buzzed. A text from Harold. "Everything's ready. Our people are in position." I smiled, remembering the past 3 months of careful preparation. While my family was busy pretending I didn't exist, I had orchestrated the most aggressive corporate takeover Morrison Industries had ever faced. The first phase had been the easiest, buying up shares through various shell companies. My father, always too proud to notice the obvious, hadn't even questioned why so many new investors were suddenly interested in his failing company. The second phase had been trickier, convincing key board members to support the leadership change. But that's where my boring attention to detail had paid off. I had spent years studying the company's operations, identifying its weaknesses, and developing solutions. When I presented my revival strategy to these board members in private meetings, they had been impressed. More importantly, they had been convinced. "Your father never once showed us numbers like these," one board member had admitted. "He just keeps talking about the good old days and how his son will restore the company's glory." I had smiled politely and added his vote to my growing collection. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert about Morrison Industries' stock price. It had dropped another 15% overnight. Right on schedule. Amazing what can happen when carefully selected rumors about a company's stability start circulating in the right circles. As my private elevator descended to the garage level, I thought about the last family dinner I had declined to attend. My mother had left a voicemail, her voice syrupy sweet with false concern. "Darling, you're being ridiculous. Your father is willing to let you return to your old position if you just apologize. Marcus even suggested you could assist with his new cryptocurrency division." I had deleted the message without responding. Let them think I was sulking. Let them believe I was nursing my wounded pride in some small apartment, regretting my interference. The reality was so much more satisfying. My driver opened the car door, and I slid into the leather backseat, opening my briefcase to review my notes one last time. The takeover documentation was perfect, every detail scrutinized, every loophole closed. I had learned from watching my father's mistakes. There would be no last-minute escapes, no clever legal maneuvers to save them. "Ms. Morrison," my driver interrupted my thoughts. "Mr. Bennett called. He's already at the office with the legal team." I nodded, watching the city streets blur past. Harold had played his part perfectly, the aggressive corporate raider making a hostile takeover attempt. My family had been so focused on fighting him, they hadn't noticed the real threat was much closer to home. The Morrison Industries building loomed ahead, 40 stories of glass and steel that my grandfather had built from nothing. I remembered coming here as a child, holding his hand as he showed me around the factory floor. "Remember Olivia?" He had said, "A good leader knows every inch of their business from the ground up." I had remembered. Unlike my father and brother, who view the company as their personal playground, I had spent my summers working in different departments, learning every aspect of the operation. The employees I passed in the lobby nodded respectfully. They remembered me, even if my family had tried to erase my existence. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent. When the doors opened, I could hear raised voices from the boardroom, my father's distinctive roar cutting through the general chaos. "This is outrageous. Bennett can't do this. We are a family company." I paused outside the boardroom doors, checking my reflection in a nearby window. My suit was immaculate, my makeup perfect, my expression composed. I thought about all the times I had sat quietly at family dinners, listening to Marcus boast about his latest failures while my parents beamed with pride. Never again. Harold met me in the anteroom, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "They're all inside. Your father's trying to convince the board to reject our offer and take out more loans instead." "Is Marcus still planning to present his cryptocurrency proposal?" Harold chuckled. "He's got a whole PowerPoint prepared. Claims it will save the company." I checked my watch. "Right on schedule then. Shall we?" Harold gestured to the doors. "After you. It's your show now." I took a deep breath, thinking of my grandfather, of his legacy, of everything my family had nearly destroyed through their arrogance and incompetence. The boardroom doors swung open. My father stood at the head of the table, his face red with fury as he waved documents in the air. Marcus sat nearby, smirking as he prepared to launch his presentation. My mother perched in a corner, already planning how to spin this crisis at her next charity luncheon. None of them noticed me at first. "This company is not for sale," my father was shouting. "Bennett can take his hostile takeover and—" Actually, I cut in, my voice carrying clearly across the room. "The company is already sold." The silence was absolute. Every head turned toward me. I saw the moment of confusion in their eyes, followed by disbelief, followed by the first flickering of fear. "Security," my father bellowed, but nobody moved. I smiled, walking calmly to the center of the room. "The security team reports to the majority shareholder now, and as of 9 o'clock this morning, that would be me." Marcus jumped to his feet, his carefully practiced CEO pose crumbling. "That's impossible. You're lying." "Sit down, Marcus," I said quietly, but with enough authority that he dropped back into his chair automatically. "The adults are talking now." I turned to address the board members, many of whom were hiding smiles behind their hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the theatrics, but I believe we have some urgent business to discuss. Specifically, the future leadership of Morrison Industries. You can't do this," my father whispered, but his voice had lost its power. We kicked you out. Yes, I agreed, setting my briefcase on the table. You did. Right after I paid off $90,000 of debt that you and Marcus had accumulated through incompetence and vanity. That was your first mistake. I began distributing documents to the board members. Your second mistake was assuming I would simply disappear. Your third mistake was not checking who was really behind Bennett Acquisition's recent interest in the company. Understanding dawned in my father's eyes. You were working with Bennett? Working with him? Harold stepped forward, grinning. She was directing everything. Most brilliant corporate takeover strategy I've seen in 30 years. My mother stood up, her social mask cracking. Why? Why would you do this to your family? Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You made it very clear that I wasn't family. I was just the quiet bookworm who didn't understand business, the disappointment who couldn't be trusted with the company's future. I walked to the head of the table, my father's place. His eyes widened as I gestured for him to move. Well, now you're going to learn exactly what this quiet bookworm can do. Please, take your seats. We have a lot to discuss about your future roles in my company. The color drained from their faces as the full impact of my words sank in. I was no longer the daughter they could dismiss, or the sister they could mock. I was their boss. And their performance review was about to begin. The silence in the boardroom was deafening as I took my place at the head of the table. My father had slunk into a chair, his face ashen, while my mother gripped her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles were white. Marcus kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water, his cryptocurrency PowerPoint forgotten on his laptop. Now then, I began, my voice steady and professional. Let's discuss the current state of Morrison Industries under its previous management. I nodded to Harold, who dimmed the lights and started the presentation I had prepared. Financial graphs appeared on the screen, all trending downward. In the past 5 years, company value has dropped 60%. Market share has decreased by 45%. Employee turnover has reached record highs. I clicked to the next slide. And most concerning, over $12 million has been invested in what the books call innovative initiatives. I turned to Marcus, whose face had gone pale. Would you like to explain to the board what happened to those investments, brother? Or shall I pull up the records of your failed cryptocurrency scheme, the disastrous NFT marketplace, the social media app that never launched? Those were calculated risks, he stammered. Every business has. Every business has to be accountable, I cut him off. Something this company has lacked for far too long. My father finally found his voice. You have no right to. I have every right, I interrupted calmly. As majority shareholder and newly appointed CEO, I have not only the right, but the responsibility to address these issues. Now let's discuss your positions. I pulled out 3 envelopes and slid them across the table. Inside, you'll find the terms of your separation from Morrison Industries. You can either accept these very generous severance packages and step down quietly, or... I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We can discuss the results of the forensic audit I had conducted last month. My mother gasped. Marcus started sweating. My father's face turned an interesting shade of purple. You wouldn't dare, he growled. We're your family. Family. I stood up slowly, placing both hands on the table. Let me tell you about family. Family doesn't mock someone's hard work. Family doesn't dismiss someone's contributions. And family certainly doesn't throw someone out after they've sacrificed everything to help. I straightened up, adjusting my suit jacket. But you're right about one thing. We are family. Which is why I'm offering you a choice instead of having security escort you out right now." Harold stepped forward, placing a stack of documents in front of each of them. "You have until the end of this meeting to decide. The severance packages are quite generous, certainly more generous than you deserve. I suggest you review them carefully." My mother opened her envelope with trembling hands. Her eyes widened as she saw the figures. This is more than fair," I finished for her. "You'll maintain your social status, keep your country club memberships, continue your charity work. All I ask is that you step down quietly and stay out of company business." Marcus was next, scanning his documents with increasing desperation. But what am I supposed to do?" "Get a real job," I suggested. "One where you actually have to work for your money." Novel concept, I know. My father hadn't touched his envelope. He just sat there, staring at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How long?" he finally asked. "How long have you been planning this?" I met his gaze steadily. "Since the first time you told me I didn't understand business. Since you dismissed every suggestion I made. Since you decided Marcus was the only one worthy of grandfather's legacy." I pulled out one final document, my grandfather's original business plan for Morrison Industries, written in his careful handwriting. "Grandfather knew," I said softly. "He saw what you couldn't. Why do you think he spent so much time teaching me about the company? Why do you think he made sure I understood every aspect of the business?" My father's face crumpled as realization dawned. He was preparing you." "Yes," I nodded. "He knew you were too proud to see the company's problems, too stubborn to adapt to changing markets, too blinded by Marcus's empty charm to see the damage he was doing." I opened the business plan to a page I had memorized long ago. The last thing he wrote before he died was this: "Morrison Industries will need strong leadership to survive the future. Look for the one who understands that success isn't about swagger or showmanship. It's about substance." The board members nodded in approval. They had seen the truth of these words in the detailed revival strategy I had presented them. "You have 1 hour to decide," I announced, standing up. "Sign the severance agreements or face a very public audit. Your choice." As I walked toward the door, my mother called out, "Wait, what about family dinners? Holidays? You can't just—" I turned back one last time. "I'm not the one who decided money was more important than family. You did that 3 months ago when you threw me out. I'm just better at the game than you are." The next hour passed quickly as I met with department heads, reviewed urgent contracts, and began implementing the changes I had planned for months. Harold kept me updated on my family's deliberations. "Your mother signed first," he reported. "Marcus followed once he realized his trust fund would be frozen if he didn't. Your father is being stubborn," I finished. "Give him 10 more minutes." 9 minutes later, my father's signature appeared on the documents. It was done. Morrison Industries was mine. That evening, as I sat in what was now my office, the same office where they had humiliated me 3 months ago, I looked out at the city lights and thought about everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "I know you're angry, but we're still family. Maybe someday." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my grandfather's business plan again, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. There was one page my father had never seen, a letter addressed to me. "Dearest Olivia, I see your strength, your intelligence, and your dedication. When the time comes, you'll know what to do to save our legacy. It won't be easy. Family rarely is. But remember, true leadership isn't about power over others. It's about the power to make things right. Love, grandfather. I smiled, thinking of how right he had been. Then I turned to my computer and began working on my plans to restore Morrison Industries to its former glory. I had a legacy to protect, after all. And this time, I would do it my way. Over the next year, Morrison Industries underwent a transformation. The changes I implemented, the ones my father had dismissed as unnecessary, led to a 40% increase in profits. Employee satisfaction reached an all-time high. Our stock price doubled. My family watched from a distance, excluded from the success they had once taken for granted. My mother still sent occasional texts, usually around holidays, trying to rebuild bridges they had burned. Marcus got a job at a mid-level marketing firm, where he actually had to work for a living. My father? Well, he retired to Florida, unable to face the reality that his quiet, bookish daughter had outmaneuvered him completely. As for me, I kept my grandfather's business plan on my desk as a reminder, not of revenge or victory, but of what real leadership means. Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about building something better than they ever imagined possible. They thought kicking me out would break me. Instead, it made me unstoppable. And that's a lesson my family will never forget.